When I discovered my wife's betrayal, everyone expected me to break down. Instead, I formulated the perfect plan. My cheating wife thought she'd walk away with half my assets and custody of her daughter. But while she was busy with her affair, I was 3 steps ahead. What happened next shocked everyone, especially her. My wife asked me for a divorce, and I was overjoyed. A few days later, she deeply regretted it. My name is Daniel Foster. I'm 51 years old, and until recently, I was what most people would call a happily married man. I've spent the last 15 years as a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley, managing portfolios worth millions. I'm good at what I do, spotting patterns, analyzing risks, and planning several steps ahead. Turns out those skills aren't just useful in the financial world. When I first met Olivia at a charity gala in Chicago, she was 24 and I was 37. She stood out in the crowd, ambitious, vibrant, with this magnetic energy that drew everyone to her. She worked in public relations and could charm anyone in a room within minutes. I still remember how she looked that night, in a blue dress that matched her eyes, laughing at something I said that wasn't even that funny. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Within a year, we were married, and 2 years later, our daughter Emily was born. Those first years were, well, they were everything I thought a marriage should be. We had our downtown apartment, weekend trips to Lake Michigan, annual vacations to the Caribbean. Olivia advanced in her career, eventually becoming a senior PR manager at a top marketing firm. I was proud of her success, encouraged it even. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. It was subtle at first. Small criticisms about how I dressed, how I should be more assertive in pursuing a promotion, how her colleague's husband took them to Paris for their anniversary. "Daniel, when are you going to step up your game?" she'd say, half joking but with an edge that cut deeper than she realized. Or maybe she did realize. I'd come home exhausted after analyzing market trends all day, and Olivia would start in about how her friend Jessica's husband, despite being younger than me, had already made partner at his law firm. Why can't you show that kind of ambition? Never mind that I was bringing in a comfortable 6-figure salary that paid for our lifestyle. Then there was Emily, our sweet, perceptive 10-year-old who somehow managed to stay sunshine despite the growing tension at home. For her sake, I swallowed my pride, bit my tongue, and tried to keep the peace. I told myself it was just a phase, that eventually Olivia would appreciate what we had built together. I never imagined divorce was on the horizon. I never thought I'd discover what I did. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, and this one came from the innocent mouth of my daughter on a Saturday afternoon as we sat in our living room watching cartoons. "Daddy," Emily said, munching on popcorn, "does Mr. Christopher like Mommy more than you do?" My world stopped spinning for a moment. "Who's Mr. Christopher, sweetie?" "Mommy's friend from work. He brings me candy when you're on your business trips. He stays for dinner sometimes. And he makes Mommy laugh a lot." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, something cold and hard was forming in the pit of my stomach. I'd become skilled at reading signs of instability in the market. Now I was seeing the signs of instability in my marriage, clear as day, for the first time. That moment changed everything. And what happened next would change both our lives forever. After Emily's innocent revelation about Mr. Christopher, I decided to approach this like I would a suspicious investment, with careful analysis and strategic planning. No emotional reactions, no confrontations without evidence. Just cold, calculated observation. The next morning, I casually mentioned to Olivia that I might need to go to New York for a conference the following week. Again, she huffed, not even looking up from her phone. "Feels like you're always gone these days." Rich coming from someone who'd been working late 3 times that week already. I made a mental note of her sudden enthusiasm for my absence. "Can't be helped," I replied. "Big clients, big expectations." I didn't actually book anything. Instead, I contacted Blake, an old college buddy who now ran a private investigation agency. I'd helped him with some financial advice when he was starting up. Now it was time to call in that favor. "Need someone to keep an eye on my house while I'm supposedly away," I told him. "Just want to know who comes and goes." Blake didn't ask questions. Good man. The week of my business trip, I checked into a hotel across town, close enough to come home if Emily needed me, far enough that neighbors wouldn't spot my car. Blake set up discreet surveillance and kept me updated. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, at 7:43 p.m., a silver Audi pulled into my driveway. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out, carrying a bottle of wine and what looked like takeout bags. Blake sent me photos. The man matched the description of Christopher Taylor, creative director at Olivia's agency. The same Christopher who made Mommy laugh a lot. He stayed until 11:21 p.m. The pattern repeated 2 more times that week. One night, he didn't leave until morning. In my house. In my bed. Each report from Blake felt like a punch to the gut, but I forced myself to think like an analyst. This wasn't about emotions. This was about gathering data and formulating a strategy. During video calls with Emily, I noticed other changes too. Olivia had rearranged furniture. There were wine glasses I didn't recognize. And Emily mentioned that Mr. Christopher fixed the kitchen sink. The man was playing house in my absence. When I returned from my trip, Olivia didn't even ask how it went. She seemed almost disappointed to see me. At dinner, Emily innocently asked, "Is Mr. Christopher coming over tonight?" The look of panic on Olivia's face was almost worth the humiliation. "Who's Christopher?" I asked calmly, watching Olivia squirm. "Just a colleague," she stuttered. "He stopped by to drop off some work documents. 3 times in 1 week. Must be a very dedicated colleague." Her face paled. "It was a big project," she said weakly. I just nodded, letting her think she'd dodged a bullet. But we both knew the game had changed. I had my confirmation. Now it was time to plan my next move. In the financial world, we have a saying, when you see a storm coming, don't wait for it to hit. Secure your assets first. And I could see a Category 5 hurricane named Olivia heading straight for my financial portfolio. I needed an attorney, not just any attorney, but someone who specialized in high-asset divorces and understood how to handle cases involving infidelity. After researching several options, I settled on Margaret Winters, a shark in a designer suit with a reputation for being merciless in court. Texas is a fault-based divorce state, Margaret explained during our first meeting. If we can prove infidelity, it significantly impacts how assets are divided and alimony is calculated. I have proof, I assured her, sliding over Blake's reports and photos. She nodded appreciatively. Good start, but not enough. We need more. Text messages, emails, financial records showing gifts or expenses related to the affair. Following her advice, I hired a digital forensics expert who helped me recover deleted text messages from our family cloud backup. The messages between Olivia and Christopher made me physically ill. Explicit exchanges, complaints about me, plans for their future together. "He's so boring," Olivia had written. "All he cares about are his spreadsheets and investments. You actually make me feel alive." Christopher's response, "Just hang in there a little longer, baby. Once you've secured your half in the divorce, we can start our life together." So that was their plan. Olivia would blindside me with divorce papers, take half my assets I've been building since before I met her, and then ride off into the sunset with Christopher. Not on my watch. With Margaret's guidance, I developed a 3-pronged strategy. First, I transferred a significant portion of my assets into irrevocable trusts for Emily's education and future, legally untouchable in a divorce. Second, I documented every instance of Olivia's neglect of our daughter. The evenings she left Emily with babysitters to meet Christopher, the school event she missed, the dance recitals she skipped to be with him. Third, I started tracking every penny Olivia spent on her affair. Hotel rooms, expensive restaurants, gifts for Christopher, building a case for dissipation of marital assets. All this time, I maintained a perfect poker face at home. I went to work, came back, played with Emily, and treated Olivia with cordial indifference. I needed her to think she still had the upper hand. "Are you okay?" she asked one night, seemingly confused by my calm demeanor. "You've been different lately." I just smiled. "Never better. Just focusing on what really matters." She had no idea that while she was planning to leave me broke and broken, I was quietly dismantling her scheme brick by brick. The pieces were in place. Now, I just needed to wait for her to make her move. Sometimes even the most carefully constructed strategies are upended by unexpected events. My moment came on a Tuesday evening, when Emily was staying at a friend's house for a sleepover. I arrived home early from work to find Olivia talking animatedly on the phone in our bedroom, the door slightly ajar. "I'm telling you, Christopher, it's the perfect time," she was saying, her voice excited. "I've already spoken with an attorney. He says I'll get half of everything, plus support. Daniel makes over 200K a year. Do you have any idea how much alimony that means? I stood frozen in the hallway, my blood running cold. Next week, she continued, I'll have the papers served at his office. Maximize the humiliation factor. Then while he's reeling, we push for a quick settlement. She laughed at something Christopher said. Of course he'll settle. Daniel avoids conflict like the plague. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him just to make it go away. The sheer callousness of it struck me like a physical blow. This wasn't just infidelity. This was premeditated financial and emotional destruction. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door open. Olivia's head snapped up, her face draining of color when she saw me. I'll call you back, she whispered into the phone, hanging up quickly. Daniel, you're home early. Her voice was unnaturally high. How long have you been standing there? Long enough, I said quietly. Long enough to hear how you and Christopher planned to destroy me. For a moment, she looked terrified. Then, remarkably, her expression shifted to defiance. What did you expect? She spat. You've been checked out of this marriage for years. Christopher sees me, appreciates me, and my bank account, apparently. My voice remained eerily calm, even as rage boiled beneath the surface. Don't be pathetic, she sneered. You should have seen this coming. Oh, I did. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Blake had taken. I've known about your affair for months. Her face went from shock to fury. You've been spying on me. Protecting myself, I corrected. And Emily. Whatever, she snarled. It doesn't change anything. I'm still filing for divorce. And I'm still taking half of everything you've worked for. I allowed myself a small smile. About that, you might want to check with your attorney about irrevocable trusts established prior to divorce proceedings. Confusion flickered across her face. What are you talking about? Let's just say I've made some financial adjustments. Your plan to bleed me dry might hit a few complications. Her eyes narrowed. You can't hide money from me. That's illegal. Nothing I've done is illegal. I searched for the right word, prudent. The realization that her carefully constructed plan was unraveling hit her like a tidal wave. And for the first time in our marriage, Olivia looked at me with something resembling respect and fear. The day after our confrontation, Olivia was uncharacteristically quiet. She moved around the house like a ghost, watching me warily, as if trying to figure out her next move. The confident woman who had mockingly planned my financial ruin was suddenly uncertain. I spent the evening with Emily, helping with her science project, acting as if everything was normal. When she went to bed, Olivia finally approached me in the living room. We need to talk, she said, perching on the edge of the sofa. I looked up from my laptop. About what? Your affair with Christopher? Your plan to serve me with divorce papers? Or how you intended to take me for everything I'm worth? She flinched. I want a divorce. Tell me something I don't know. I'm filing tomorrow, she said, lifting her chin defiantly. My lawyer says. Let me save you the legal fees, I interrupted. Your lawyer is going to discover that most of my assets are now in irrevocable trusts for Emily's future. I've documented your affair exhaustively, including proof that you used marital funds to finance it. I have time-stamped evidence of you neglecting our daughter to meet your lover. In Texas, those factors significantly impact both financial settlements and custody arrangements. Her face paled. You're bluffing. I slid a folder across the coffee table. See for yourself. As she flipped through the photos, financial records, and legal documents I prepared, her hands began to shake. You can't do this, she whispered. I'm not doing anything, I replied calmly. I'm simply protecting what's mine, including my daughter. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. I'll fight you. I'll drag this through court for years. You can try. But ask yourself, what will Christopher think when his married girlfriend suddenly has no access to the wealthy lifestyle he's been counting on? When you have to pay your own legal fees instead of using my money to fund your case against me? The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her entire plan had hinged on using my resources to finance her escape with Christopher. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice hollow. I want you to show the same strategic thinking you used when plotting against me, I said evenly. Accept my terms, and we can end this quickly. Fight me, and I'll make sure every detail of your affair becomes public record, including in Emily's school community. That's blackmail, she hissed. That's leverage, I corrected. And unlike you, I'm using it to protect our daughter, not destroy her family for selfish gain. Something shifted in Olivia's expression. Not quite remorse, but the dawning realization that she'd severely miscalculated. "What are your terms?" she asked quietly. I slid another document toward her. "Read this. It's fair, more than fair, considering the circumstances. But it's a one-time offer." As she scanned the settlement I prepared, I saw something I hadn't expected in her eyes, a flicker of grudging respect. Olivia took the settlement agreement, but didn't sign it immediately. "I need to think about this," she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "And I need to talk to my lawyer." "You have 48 hours, I replied. After that, my terms become less generous. The next morning, I dropped Emily at school and headed to work, trying to focus on market analyses instead of my crumbling personal life. Around noon, my assistant interrupted a meeting. "Mr. Foster, your wife is here. She seems upset." I found Olivia in the reception area, eyes red-rimmed, looking nothing like the polished PR executive she normally presented to the world. "We need to talk," she said, privately. In a small conference room, she placed her phone on the table between us and pressed play on a voice recording. "I don't care about her kid." Christopher's voice filled the room. "Once we get the settlement, she can figure out the custody stuff herself. I'm not playing stepdad to some brat." I watched Olivia's face as the recording continued. "Just need to milk this divorce for everything it's worth. The guy's loaded. Once she gets her cut, we'll be set. She's still hot enough to keep around for a while." The recording ended. Olivia's hands were shaking. "When was this?" I asked quietly. "Last night, after I told him about your settlement offer and the evidence you have." Her voice cracked. "I thought he loved me." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "What did you expect, Olivia? He helped you betray your family. Did you think he had some moral code that wouldn't eventually apply to you too?" She flinched, but didn't argue. "He said I should fight you in court anyway. That we could still win." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "But after hearing this, I don't want to fight anymore, Daniel." "What are you saying?" "I'll sign your settlement. I'll agree to the custody arrangement for Emily." She paused. I was wrong. About everything. I studied her carefully. This could be another manipulation. Olivia playing the victim to gain sympathy. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I have nothing left to gain by lying," she said simply. "Christopher clearly only wanted my money." "Your money. My lawyer says your evidence would devastate any case I might bring. And," her voice softened, "Emily deserves better than what I've been." I remained skeptical. "And the settlement? It's much less than you'd hoped for." "It's fair," she admitted. "More than fair, considering what I did." I nodded slowly, surprised by this turn of events. "I'll have my attorney draw up the final papers." As I stood to leave, Olivia caught my arm. "Daniel, I'm sorry. Not that it matters now." "You're right," I said, gently removing her hand. "It doesn't." But as I walked back to my office, I felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, but a weight lifting. The battle I'd been preparing for might end not with a bang, but with a whimper. The day we signed the divorce papers was surreal. 2 years ago, I would never have imagined sitting across from Olivia in my attorney's wood-paneled office, officially ending our marriage. Yet here we were, Margaret guiding us through the final documents. "This settlement stipulates that Ms. Foster retains her personal assets, plus $300,000 from the joint accounts and her vehicle," Margaret summarized. "Mr. Foster maintains the house, his retirement accounts, and all assets in Emily's trusts. Physical custody of Emily will be shared, with Mr. Foster having primary residence and decision-making authority." Olivia nodded, her expression unreadable as she signed each page. She'd been subdued since discovering Christopher's true motivations. According to my sources, she'd ended things with him immediately after hearing the recording. After we finished signing, Margaret excused herself, leaving us alone momentarily. "So that's it," Olivia said quietly. 15 years, over with a signature. "The marriage ended long before today," I replied. "This is just paperwork." She looked down at her hands. "I keep thinking about what I've thrown away. And for what? A man who saw me as nothing but a payday." She laughed bitterly. "Karma's a real bitch." Despite everything, a part of me ached for her. Not because I wanted her back. That ship had sailed, but because I remembered the bright, ambitious woman I'd fallen in love with. "What will you do now?" I asked. I've accepted a position with a firm in Austin, she said. Fresh start. I'll find an apartment near enough to have Emily on the weekends. I nodded. I think that's wise. An awkward silence fell between us. There was so much unsaid, yet nothing left worth saying. Daniel. She finally spoke, her voice hesitant. I know you don't believe me, but I am sorry. Not just because I got caught, but because of what I did to you and Emily. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd come to expect, but found only regret. I believe you're sorry now, I said carefully. But that doesn't change what happened. I know, she whispered. I just need you to know that I never meant to hurt Emily. I got so caught up in yourself. I finished for her. That's always been your North Star, Olivia. She flinched but didn't argue. Margaret returned with copies of our signed documents. As we rose to leave, Olivia paused. For what it's worth, I do wish you happiness, Daniel. You deserve it. So do you, I replied, surprising myself with the sincerity. Just find it the right way next time. Watching her walk away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief, sadness, and strange as it seemed, hope. Not for reconciliation, but for healing. For the first time in months, I could see a future beyond the anger and betrayal. Emily and I would be okay. And maybe, someday, Olivia would be too. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, life had settled into a new rhythm. Emily spent weekdays with me and weekends with Olivia in her new Austin apartment. The transition had been easier than I expected. Kids really are more resilient than we give them credit for. One Saturday morning, as I sipped coffee and reviewed some investment portfolios, my doorbell rang. It was Blake, my PI friend who had helped uncover Olivia's affair. Thought I'd check in on you, he said, settling into a chair on my back patio. How's it going post-divorce? I considered the question. Better than I expected. Work is good. Emily's adjusting well. I searched for the right word. Healing, I guess. Blake nodded. Heard through the grapevine that Christopher's firm passed him over for partnership last month. Seems his reputation took a hit when word got out about him pursuing a married colleague. I didn't take pleasure in the news, exactly, but I couldn't deny a certain satisfaction. Karma indeed. And Olivia? Blake asked carefully. Doing okay, from what I can tell. She's focused on rebuilding her relationship with Emily. Actually showing up for dance recitals, school events. Being present in a way she wasn't before. You sound almost forgiving. I shook my head. Not forgiving. Understanding, maybe. What Olivia did was inexcusable, but I'm not interested in holding on to anger that only hurts me and Emily. Blake studied me for a moment. You've changed. Had to. I replied simply. After Blake left, I picked up Emily from her Saturday morning soccer practice. Her face lit up when she saw me, running over with the unfiltered joy only children can express. Daddy, Coach says I'm getting really good at dribbling. That's awesome, sweetheart, I said, hugging her. Want to get lunch before I drop you at Mom's? In the car, Emily grew quiet, fiddling with her seatbelt. Dad, are you still mad at Mom? The question caught me off guard. What makes you ask that? She shrugged. Sometimes Mom cries when she thinks I'm sleeping. She told Aunt Karen that she ruined everything good in her life. Emily looked up at me with serious eyes. Does that mean me too? My heart clenched. Absolutely not. Your mom loves you more than anything. And no, I'm not mad at her anymore. Then why can't we all live together again? I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults make mistakes that change how they feel about each other. But those mistakes never, ever change how we feel about you. Emily seemed to process this. Mom's different now. She doesn't look at her phone all the time. And she made real pancakes yesterday, not frozen ones. I smiled. That's good, Em. Are you happier now, Daddy? You smile more. Out of the mouths of babes. Yeah, I think I'm happier now. And surprisingly, it was true. The life I'd fought so hard to protect was evolving into something new. Something, perhaps, even better than before. 1 year after the divorce, I was reviewing Emily's college trust when my phone rang. Margaret, my divorce attorney, rarely called without reason. Daniel, I've got an interesting situation. Olivia's attorney contacted me. She wants to amend the custody agreement. My grip tightened on the phone. Amend how? Nothing drastic, Margaret assured me. Currently you have Emily weekdays, Olivia weekends. She's proposing alternating weeks. Why? I asked, immediately suspicious. She's been offered a promotion, Senior VP of Communications. It would mean more regular hours, less travel. I sat back, processing this. Olivia had been consistent with Emily over the past year, never missing a weekend, showing up for school events, even when they fell on my days. The Olivia from before would have taken the promotion without considering how it affected our daughter. I'll think about it, I told Margaret. That evening, I received a text from Olivia. Can we talk about the custody change in person? Coffee tomorrow. We met at a neutral cafe, the tension between us noticeably less than it had been a year ago. Before you say anything, Olivia began, I want you to know I won't fight you if you say no. This isn't about taking Emily from you. Then what is it about? I asked. I've been seeing a therapist, she admitted, working through why I did what I did. One thing became clear. I used work to avoid being present for you and for Emily. She looked down at her coffee. This promotion would mean more responsibility, but actually less travel. Regular hours. I could be more present in Emily's daily life, not just for fun weekends. I studied her carefully. And if I agree, what happens when the next Christopher comes along? She flinched but met my gaze. There won't be another Christopher. I'm not dating by choice. I'm focusing on rebuilding my relationship with our daughter and myself. Something in her eyes, a quiet determination I recognized from the woman I'd first fallen in love with, gave me pause. Emily asked me last week why she couldn't stay with you sometimes on school nights. I admitted. She misses you. I miss her every day, Olivia whispered. But I'll respect whatever you decide. I considered everything. Olivia's consistent effort over the past year, Emily's desire to spend more time with her mother, the changes I'd observed in my ex-wife. Let's try a month, I finally said. See how it affects Emily's schoolwork and routine. If it works, we can make it permanent. The relief on Olivia's face was palpable. Thank you, Daniel. As we parted, she hesitated. You know, losing you and nearly losing Emily was the wake-up call I needed. I'm not glad about how it happened, but I'm grateful for where it led me. Walking back to my car, I realized something surprising. The anger that had fueled me for so long had finally dissipated completely. In its place was something unexpected. Hope for a future where Emily had two whole, healthy parents, even if they were no longer together. 2 years to the day after I discovered Olivia's affair, I sat on the sidelines of Emily's soccer championship game. She'd grown so much, not just physically, but in confidence and resilience. At 12, she was becoming her own person, shaped by, but not defined by the changes in her family. Great save, Emily, came a familiar voice beside me. Olivia had arrived, taking the seat I'd saved. Our shared custody arrangement had evolved over the past year, finding a rhythm that worked for everyone, especially Emily. She's incredible, I agreed. Coach says she might be varsity material when she hits high school. We watched in companionable silence as our daughter blocked another attempt at goal. The awkwardness that had once defined our interactions had gradually faded, replaced by something I never expected: respect. Olivia had kept her word, focusing on her relationship with Emily and her own personal growth. I'd seen her change from the self-centered woman who'd betrayed our family to someone more reflective, more present, more like the person I'd originally married. At halftime, Emily jogged over, her face flushed with excitement. Did you see that save, Dad? Mom, we sure did, champ, I said, giving her a high five. You're dominating out there, Olivia added proudly. As Emily ran back to her team, Olivia turned to me. I never thanked you properly. For what? For giving me a second chance with Emily. For not poisoning her against me when you had every right to. I considered her words. Children shouldn't have to carry adult burdens. Besides, she needs both her parents. Still, Olivia said softly, many men in your position would have made different choices. Vindictive choices. Don't get me wrong, I admitted. I considered it. When I first found out about Christopher, I wanted to destroy you. She nodded, accepting this truth. What changed? I realized revenge might feel good momentarily, but it wouldn't give Emily what she needed long-term. And ultimately, that's what matters. The referee blew the whistle, signaling the second half. As we refocused on the game, Olivia spoke again. I heard you've been seeing someone. Emily mentioned to Sarah. I was surprised by the lack of jealousy in her tone. Yes, a financial advisor at a different firm. It's still new. I'm glad, she said sincerely. You deserve happiness, Daniel. Emily's team, won the championship that day. As we both hugged our daughter, celebrating her victory, I reflected on how far we'd come. The betrayal that had once threatened to consume me had ultimately led to personal growth I might never have achieved otherwise. My assets were secure. My relationship with my daughter was stronger than ever. And I'd found a peace I never thought possible when this all began. In the ledger of life, despite everything, I'd come out ahead. Not because I'd executed the perfect revenge, but because I'd chosen a better path forward. And that made all the difference.